So this season of The Boys has been pretty bad overall. I would say it's been quite a lot worse than the previous three, but the show has been going downhill really for quite some time. The I would say Gen V actually was much more interesting with an actual mystery and an actual plot, whereas The Boys this season is mostly just spinning its wheels and then occasionally throwing something shocking at us because apparently that's all you need these days, just shock value. And what I'm told often when I critique this is, if you're so offended, just don't watch it. Well, I'm not really offended other than as a story, as a lover of stories. I like good stories, and I don't think that you can just replace a good story with some shocking, gory stuff. Like, what are we all 13? Like, fucking get out of here. Like, also, I don't ever like that if you don't like it, don't watch it. It's like, if you don't love America, you should just leave. Nah, man, like, you're supposed to make your country better. What, do you not understand what patriotism means? First of all, never tell a critic not to watch something if they don't like it. Critics are supposed to watch stuff they don't like. But don't tell regular people that either, for two reasons. First of all, people are allowed to want the show that they used to like to still be good and not just leave if they don't like it. I mean, we're allowed to be like, hey, I used to like eating at this restaurant. I wish it was better. I wish they hadn't gone so downhill. Like, maybe I won't eat here anymore. But that brings me to a second reason is like, you don't want people to stop watching something because if they all stop watching, the ratings go down and it gets canceled. Sorry, I really hate, it's a real pet peeve of mine. I really hate that one. Don't watch it if you don't like it, or don't watch it if you're offended by it, or whatever. I just find it so extraordinarily stupid. The sixth episode of The Boys, the fifth episode of The Boys, I was like, oh, hey, look, it's finally getting good. I actually like this episode. The sixth episode, however, that's where Huey is taken. He's dressed. This is an episode after he had to put his father down, effectively euthanize his father, who had gotten a superpower that made him effectively like. I just used effectively like way too many times, but it makes him a reverse Flash, right? He can phase through things and he starts killing people. So when he comes back to his senses, Huey gives him a fatal dose of drugs that kill him. But one episode later, Huey is now going undercover in another really, really stupid plan that the boys have to go into Tech Knight's like soiree with a bunch of politicians and all these soups to find out, I guess, intel. Now, remember Tech Knight, if you've seen Gen V or if you've heard anything about him in this show, Tech Knight is effectively, oh my God, I said effectively again. Tech Knight is basically Batman, right? He is the greatest detective in the world, but unlike Batman, he's got superpowers that make him even more powerful in terms of his detection skills. He can tell if people are lying. He is really, really good at reading people. So going undercover as somebody that he knows, Web Weaver, the Spider-Man analog here, going on is already a bad plan. But so many of the boys' plans are actual dog shit plans. And so often, remarkably enough, the only way they get out of their screw-ups is being rescued by A-Train or Maeve or one of these other superheroes that they're trying to take down. I mean, they're practically useless, these guys. I don't know what's going on. Anyways, their brilliant idea is to have Huey go in as Web Weaver, and at one point, they go down to Tech Knight's sex dungeon because, of course, every superhero, except for the good ones, has to have some really outrageous kinks, right? They can't, at the beginning of the show, these outrageous kinks were usually tied to their character, right? They were invisible, so they were a pervert who would spy on people, something like that, where there was some relation to their superpower and their weird kinks, but also it just gets old. People, the writers of this show, I swear to God, they just have lost any sort of creativity that they once had. It's all this idea that more shock value is more fun, where rather than let's have other things that maybe differentiate these awful superheroes, right? Supes don't all have to have a weird kink. Can't some of them just have other things that define their badness? I mean, our kinks, to me, it's like they're almost like presenting like kink itself as something bad that sexual deviancy is wrong, right? And that's a weird thing for a show that's brandished as being this very progressive parody of right-wing shit. So, anyways, in this dungeon, Huey is subjected to a lot of weird shit as Web Weaver. It is effectively, in my opinion, a sexual assault. It is no less a sexual assault than what happens to Starlight when the Deep tells her she needs to give him a blowjob. The difference is this entire scene is played for laughs. And in another context, if this was actually just superheroes all consensually having this together in their weird kink sex dungeon orgy, it could be funny. The cake farting and stuff like that could be funny. But it's baffling to me that people writing a show that is apparently as progressive as The Boys would not understand that if you're going in undercover and you have to go through with this because the alternative is that they would probably kill you, that is actually not consensual sex. That all of this stuff that happens, all the weird shit, right up until Tech Knight's going to cut a hole into Huey because he has a bizarre obsession with any hole that he can fuck. That is sexual assault. That's not funny. And even though I acknowledge that the episode makes it darker and darker as it goes, and that afterwards Huey is traumatized, the fact is they play a lot of it for laughs. And then, when asked by an interviewer, Eric Kripke, the showrunner, is asked, let's start with the Tech Knight sex dungeon part. Where did the idea come for it? And why bring Huey into this situation now, kicking him when he's down by having him sexually assaulted by his childhood hero after his dad just died? I think that's a pretty good question, actually. Kripke's response is super tone deaf and weird. He says, well, that's a dark way to look at it. We view it as hilarious. Obviously, Tech Knight is our version of Batman, and we wanted to really play around with that trope. Batman's fascist underpinnings as a really wealthy dude who hunts poor people. Again, that's not how I would view Batman personally, but that's neither here nor there. And then profits off the incarceration. Now, I think actually having Tech Knight be an evil Batman and have these private prisons where he profits off of those is a pretty good way to parody Batman, even though I don't think Batman was a fascist. I don't think Batman is hunting poor people or profiting off of them. And I think that's all bullshit, but I'm a big Batman fan, so whatever. And then, make the Batcave a sex dungeon. Like, it works as a parody. But again, this is not just a BDSM scene. This was a scene where Huey was only going through with any of it to save his own life. And I'm not outraged by this. I'm bothered by the way the showrunners play it for laughs. Whereas if you look at what they said about Starlight, when she went through that scene, Kripke's response in an interview about this was, I wanted to get it right. I had a lot of conversations with a lot of women, some of which were very painful, and I did my absolute best to get the F out of the way and just let them speak and not try to steer it one way or another. And then ultimately kind of, boil it down to Starlight's experience, both in that moment and then in the aftermath of that moment. And he goes on and on. Because if I got that wrong, he says, it's not just that it would fail as a scene, it would be hurtful. And I felt that pressure and responsibility all throughout. Why then? Why do you view this thing that happens to Huey right after he loses his dad? Why do you view that as hilarious? Because I'm sorry, I just didn't think it was. I didn't think the Starlight scene was hilarious either. And I think if Eric Kripke had said about the Starlight scene when asked about, how he handled the sexual assault, if he'd said that's a dark way to look at it, we view it as hilarious, I think a lot of people would be rightfully upset. But weirdly, a lot of people are not upset by this scene with Huey, and I've gotten a lot of pushback on the article I wrote about it, which I just pointed out there is a difference in how victims of sexual assault who are female and victims of sexual assault who are male are treated in this culture. I'm not outraged. I'm not like cancel your Amazon subscription, never watch The Boys again. I'm saying there's a difference and it's kind of fucked up. I'm sorry, it really is. It's kind of fucked up that this one scene where we don't even see it, it happens off screen. Starlight isn't threatened with her life to do it or not, but it's a horrible thing that she does, that she has to do for somebody who she views at the time as an authority figure. That's treated. But they have to get this right. I had a lot of conversations with a lot of women, and if I failed, it would hurt. But the guy who gets clearly is in an extended scene that's played for laughs. That seems hypocritical. It seems especially hypocritical because this show is so fucking preachy now. It's so preachy. Homelander has gone from being a really scary supervillain to being an analog for Trump. And they're just the subtleties of their parody the satirical stuff that really worked early on has just fallen way to the preachiest, most boneheaded, most on the nose, like outside of some stuff in episode 5 that I found very funny, for the most part, it's just lost its edge. And now it's just this vehicle for, like, let's make fun of Republicans. Which, fine. I have no love for Republicans, but I don't think it's very good art, and I don't think it's particularly clever or entertaining. And then to have all this nerve of taking something as sensitive as a sexual assault and say it's hilarious strikes me as reprehensible, frankly, and just really, really, really kind of shocking, honestly. You know, I'll keep watching The Boys. I think it's really lost its way. I think it's been spinning in circles forever now. I think they should have killed off Frenchie, and they should have probably done something a little more interesting with Kimiko. And Mother's Milk has kind of just been a total like failure at his job for so long now. And I just don't know what the point of half these characters are at this point. Like, the show just doesn't really have any direction. It feels rudderless, and so many of its characters feel one note and almost irrelevant to the larger story. And the larger story itself, I have no idea where they're supposed to take this thing because it just isn't working. So, anyways, that's my take. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me know what you think of this scene, of the show right now in the comments, and peace.